Good afternoon, Governor.
Good
Thanks for having
afternoon.
us being here on the Street Addressing Initiative. Let's talk street addressing.
Mm-hmm.
So, thanks for taking the time. I know your busy schedule. The first thing I want to do basically is do an intro of a story of how I first met you. I don't know if you remember last year in the Carnival opening a Carnival Village last year. And our mutual friend, Mr. Missio, introduced me.
That's right.
She came over to me. I was like, Governor's here. Governor's here. Let's go talk to him. In my head, I'm like putting together the elevator pitch. Let's go. I came up to you, shook your hand, introduced me, and then you proceed to tell me about street addressing and the whole spiel of what you want to see and all this stuff. Has this been something that has been on your mind for a while, or is it something that you know needs to get done for the territory?
Well, I'm a data junkie, so street addressing is a very important initiative in terms of getting the data to where it needs to be. I'll give you a little story of mine. Right after the storm, I went to the Community Foundation at St. Croix, trying to figure out how do we get to seniors and how do we get to people who have illnesses, how do we get medication, the most vulnerable. And they didn't have any information, and no one seemed to have information about where people were. And I immediately went back to street addressing and understanding that because we didn't have that GPS system and that naming grid system in place, we couldn't do a lot of things that we wanted to do with census data. We couldn't do stuff that we wanted to do in terms of initiatives with education. We couldn't do stuff that we wanted to track in crime. So there's a whole lot of reasons why this is very near and dear to my heart. And I always tell people the Virgin Islands is a very small place. So if you want to try out the effectiveness of a product, we are ideal. We're ideal for that. The years of turn red, red, and mango tree, you think I left when you see the big white rock, and they gone.
I mean, you're right. And the thing is, historically, we've had to get around utilizing landmarking. Right. And for some of your staff, and by team, especially the E911 Center, we do have to give kudos to them for getting access to people without having street addresses, knowing where things are.
Well, you know what that feeds off of is another one of my jobs in the past was working at the telephone for the telephone company, then innovative in the 912 repair center.
Oh, wow.
So we would take the addresses and those used to upload into the 911 system so people know where to find it, because when you need your phone repaired, you gotta give directions to the house. And they would literally say, turn right. That's how we got our destinations. And even now with GPS, over the holidays, a friend of mine invited me to their house. They had a family get together and everything. And he's like, you know where I live? I'm like, well, no, but I'm on GPS it. I could hear the music playing from his house. I could see it in the distance. But the road I was on didn't connect to where it needed to be. So it is very important. And then my brother, as most people know by now, was a paramedic, one of my brothers. So that's very important too, being able to get medical attention
to somewhere it needs to be.
Right where it needs to be, not looking around. And literally ambulances drive around neighborhoods looking for people waving or something so they can know where to stop.
And as you know, you brought up a couple, with my team, a couple unfortunate situations that happened last year when ambulances just couldn't get to the folks they need to get to.
Right.
Especially in the dense areas like outside, way down here and outside. So I know this project, as you've been familiar with it, how is it impactful for your other agencies like Public Works, CPNR? How are they looking at it?
Well, one of the things that Public Works is a good place now. One of the things we're doing now is we're about to go and purchase this asset management system that looks at roadways, stairs, sidewalks, and then it gauges how long it will be before we repair them, what it would cost to repair them, what the life cycle of some of the products, whether it's paint or concrete or asphalt that we're putting in. You gotta know where these things are located. Another thing is we have a lot of government property that's been abandoned and stuff. I mean, there's so many different uses for this. And homelessness, where is it concentrated? Poverty, where is it concentrated? Those are things for human and health services. Right now, we're really concerned about coronavirus. But we're actually about to launch a project in health that tracks dengue and other mosquito-transmitted viruses. And part of how they use that is kind of finding out where people live one of the things that I know that is difficult when we were doing some data analysis is you can't tell where people are because a lot of people have post office box numbers.
Carrier codes.
Yeah, so when you have street addresses, you can identify things like, everybody along the street got cancer with a new cancer registry. Like, why is that? Is that a wind pattern from some places that's causing that? Is that something they drank? So there's a variety of uses for this information, but this is the information age, and we haven't been doing a lot of that in the Virgin Islands. Using data is so powerful. I had a conversation this morning with a taxi driver who was telling, getting apps and being able to pay from phone to phone on apps for tourists is so important, because once you get their phone number, you know where they're going, you know where they've been, and you know what their phone number is. Now you can always invite them back to the Virgin Islands, and you know what demographics they're coming from. So the whole GPS technology, being able to track where tourists are going, help us design our towns better. If you know everybody's staying up on the one side of town, I mean, some of the things we just take it for granted, but having statistical data that shows us that can help us to say, well, we need to make an economic investment maybe in Market Square, or in order to get people moving towards that.
Now, when you do bring up the policy side of things, now, street addressing, as you know, is pretty much the ground level of society functions. Now, with the lack of street addressing, like for instance, how do you then look at something like the census? When it brings you back data, and it's just these big blocks of information. It's nothing tied to the streets or anything precise that you look at a demographic. Does that kind of bother you a little bit, that you really can't accurately see?
Well, like I told you, I mean, I'm an information junkie, so I'm one of those people who are like with bated breath waiting for the census to be issued, because I want to see where the demographics are. I mean, it tells you very interesting things. I mean, the last census, we only had like 10% of our households in the Virgin Islands that earned over $100,000. Well, where are those people? Where are they living? Where are our concentrations of poverty, and how can we break that up? Those are very essential for us, and especially in building our schools. We're about to embark upon, I mean, the Virgin Islands is headed to in a renaissance period now, where we're building new schools, new hospitals, new infrastructure and support systems. It can also predict what's going to come in the future. If you know in a particular area, you're seeing a lot of people in the age demographic of 15 to 25 or 25 to 35 moving to a particular area, you know that those are childbearing ages, so you have to ramp up your school. Exactly. Yeah. So it's very helpful in terms of our planning.
So we do have a good relationship with U.S. Census right now. We're relying on the data that we generate from the GIS division as far as the estates, what parcels are, information like that. But they are just street addresses. Because that's the only way that allows them to actually see it down to individual house to house level, which it allows you then to make correct policy, or not correct, but better policy making as far as how you operate within the structure.
Because we have to, and then it also helps you measure policy that was made in the past. The enterprise zones, for instance, we have specific areas that are designated enterprise zones, and we could see whether those streets by street, which places are doing better in terms of the economic stability of that street versus another one, and places where we may need to spread the enterprise zone too. So measuring policy decisions of the past is important too. Whether we had a policy decision many years ago to forbid the issuing of licenses for bars in our downtown areas. And if you notice now, especially you can see it in St. Thomas, there's a proliferation of bars up into our residential areas in Canton, Frenchtown, and Savannah because of that policy. Because you couldn't get a license in the town, people put them up. So the adverse effect of policy is another thing where, having this data available.
A little side note here. So I'd like to present you with your official addresses. So this this one is for your Catherine Murder. So there's two. You can go through it. It's public to see if they can.
You get a high resolution address. 1080p.
Yeah, 1080p. So that's your information for I think that's the back one. No, that's the front. So that's the front gate of Catherine Murder. So that's 1080. What is it?
1080.
Catherine Murder. And this is the other one that you helped out with.
Oh, the naming of the
back
street.
entrance, remember?
500 Catherine
So that's the back entrance along that road. So
Nice.
our road has addresses, and you're the only active address coming from that back side.
Wow, my residence has 2 addresses on the road.
Yes. Well, it's 2 different roads. So the one from the gate, and then one from the back.
Got you. Catherine Murder.
And then just an example of what we're giving to your constituents, the frequently asked questions, and we'll display it on the screen for the viewers when we do the post study. And then here's some application from emergency management and by who are very active participants and being stakeholders for the project. We're very proud to have them on board to help get us through this process.
So let me ask you a question now too. Once this initiative is complete, I noticed it because I have a roadside post office box at my personal address. There are a lot of companies now that are verifying your street address when you order stuff on the internet. And there are a lot of street addresses that are not verified in the Virgin Islands. So it's very frustrating. So this would solve that problem as well.
Yes, so you bring up a great point. The U.S. Postal Service, because we did not have an established standardized address page for them to use, they created what is called a router's carrier code.
Right.
So that's what we have right now. So I can't remember what it is for Government House, but I know from Lieutenant Governor's office is 5041 Congress.
Right.
That's not a street address. It's a router's carrier code. So router is the driver is number 5, and that's the 49th stop on his route.
Oh, that's
so that's 0, and that's why they can't use it. That's why none of
mine is 9057.
Yeah, so that's the 9th and 57 stop on his route.
He's not the 90th driver.
No, I mean the 9th, sorry.
Only kidding.
So you bring up your spot, your government house, here's your government house address. You want address? Take address. So that's
1126 Congans Garden. What was the other address before? It was 37?
So the parcel information for your government house is 20 and 21 Congans Garden. So that's the parcel that the structure sits on.
Interesting.
So this is the street address for that parcel.
Gotcha.
So 1126 Congans Garden.
A lot of people have aspired to get to top 21 and 22 Congans.
I know, right? So now they aspire to go.
I haven't even gotten there yet. I live in a side house now.
But we do have, we're asking, for the folks who have received active addresses already, post them. I think one of the first spots we have is the old Antonio Jarvis Museum, who was in the pilot process for the street address. And they have their street address posted up.
So when I go by there, I can see it.
842 John. You'll see it right on the column. So they're one of the first spots. I know Lieutenant Governor's Road is working on his. So we are doing some active implementations of utilizing the addresses immediately. So with Director Jashin, we'll be using the addresses in the new E911 system.
Nice.
So within the bridge phase area, you'll be able to route assets to places that people say, we're going to test somebody way out in the back of some island called E911, and you should be able to route assets from Homer Brown and from Fargo. Because both those asset places have street addresses. So we just want to let you know that this is active. As soon as you get that, now it's active.
That was great.
Yeah.
I'll make sure you put on my sign.
Yes. We're hoping that people, there's regulations to it, but we're in the island, so don't make it so hard and edgy. So we want to at least have some cultural play. Still maintaining the regulations that we have online as far as the size, the lettering, being able to be visible from the street, those type of national standards.
So when will the post office address become your street address?
So after the project is finished, so we've had multiple conversations with the U.S. Postal Service specifically about that. They don't want piece. So as we finish the bridge phase, they're not going to take it. We have to finish the whole territory, the whole street grid for them to implement it.
And how long do you anticipate that?
So that's about 8 months to 12 months.
That's not bad at all.
So it's something that as we go through the process, we're learning better and better and how to be more efficient at it, waste less typically, with our relationship with UVI, we try to get field crews through UVI, trying to get the academia and the student body involved into this large-scale project.
So now with new, I'm asking you more questions.
Yeah, hey, interview me.
So now, if there are new homes built along that street that were not in this initial survey, how do they get street addresses?
So the next phase for on the regulatory side is discussing with DPNR when does addressing happen? When does street addressing happen? From what I've learned, dealing with the people on the national side, people on the federal side, that it happens right at the planning stage. So say a subdivision comes into Commissioner Oriole, or a building plan comes into Commissioner Oriole, it should get addressing right then. So we definitely know we'll have to work through how planning operates here in the territory, but it's something that we can't wait till it gets down the road, till it gets to a contractor, till it gets to cadastral, to then try and put in an address. It should happen right as a subdivision is being created.
Gotcha. So plot number 88K, that's going on.
Yeah. Well, the plots will still remain the same. For parcel numbers for deed of ownership and transfers and stuff like that. But like in the States, most people don't know their parcel. They have a parcel address, but they don't know their parcel address as well. With here, it's completely different. Most people know their parcel address, but don't have a street address. So we're just implementing that street address link for emergency services, for us to get around, navigate properly, for it to be then utilized in GPS and Google and stuff like that. So I mean, it is highly technical, but it's something that we can maintain our cultural relevance by getting communities actively involved in naming the streets that are.
You know what it is? It's about time. It's about time.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm just glad for the opportunity to participate, and wish you well in the project, and I know it's going to be awesome for Virgin Islanders and us data junkies as well.
Yes. I'd like to see if you had any important points or important reminders to the public that you did.
I was going to say that the public supports and comes out and makes sure that they cooperate in every which way possible as we go through this. I mean, the life we save might be yours or your mom, so, thank you for all the work you do.
Yes.
And keep up the good work.
Well, yeah, thank you for the shout out in the state of Texas.
Always.
Thank you, Governor.